We already got more people than last year.
Yeah, so I'll just wait till like 6:02 to start, and yeah, it does look like we have a bunch of people. Okay, so it looks like we have a good amount of people on, so I'll just start now. So good evening, everyone. My name is Zoe, and I'm a grants project manager in Gloucester's Community Development Department. So I'll be running us through our slideshow tonight. But before we get started, I wanted to let my team introduce themselves. So we can probably start with you, Jamie, and just pass it along.
Thank you, Zoe. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Corliss. I'm the City of Gloucester Grants Administrator. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Good evening. I'm David Fields, the Community Development Director here for the City of Gloucester. Off to you, Pete.
Good evening. I'm Pete Williamson. I'm another project manager. I work with Zoe here at the City of Gloucester.
Jacob, you going for it? All right. Maybe he's grabbing a glass of water.
It's okay. Thank you everyone for your introductions. I'm going to get started. I'm going to shut off my camera during the presentation just so it's not distracting. And let me know if you guys can see that. Okay, just to go over the format a little bit, I'll be going through what is community development block grant funding, what do we use it for, and what are the limitations. Then we will be moving into the community participation portion, where we'll have some prompting questions in categories where we would greatly appreciate input and feedback from all of you. And if there are any major questions about the slides in the meantime, please feel free to raise your hand and someone from my team will be able to promote you to speak. So this is our City of Gloucester Annual Action Plan meeting. You may have also seen our survey that has been going around the community. It's a very brief survey for us to get as much information and input from the community as we possibly can. You can find the survey on Innovate Gloucester, and I've added the QR code here and link if anyone would like to take it. So CDBG is a federal program for housing and community development efforts, and it has been running since the 70s. It serves a huge broad base of cities, states, and urban counties. And the City of Gloucester is considered a formula community, which means the amount of funding we receive each year is based on the extent of poverty, population, situation of housing, and this is based on the most current census data. So what is the annual action plan? So the annual action plan is basically a progress report, which we do every year. It is a federal requirement that Gloucester must meet to receive the block grant and other formula block grants. It is basically a snapshot of social, demographic, economic, and market conditions in Gloucester and how we plan on addressing these conditions. So the important part of the annual action plan is the outreach component to get feedback from the community and what you all see as our needs, strengths, and opportunities, which is why we are all meeting tonight. So again, the annual action plan really sets the stage. It gives us performance goals such as direct spending, funding, energy, and efforts. And this is the time where we really assess everything for the year and how we plan to address them. So the current timeline from December through March, we will be gathering information and asking people for feedback and input. And then in March, we will have a draft action plan, which will be advertised and open for a comment period. It is a federal requirement that we have a comment period for at least 15 days long. During this time, we will also have another public hearing to get input on our annual action plan. And our annual action plan has to be submitted to HUD by May 15th, but we always like to get in a little earlier. So what are some things CDBG can pay for? There are 4 broad categories that we stick to: housing, public services, economic development, and public facilities. So while addressing those 4 categories, we also have to keep in mind our key requirements. At least 70% of all funds we spend must benefit low to moderate income households, and every activity must meet a national objective that is benefiting low to moderate income people, aid at the prevention and elimination of slums or blight, and or meet an urgent need. So an example of an urgent need would just be something like a natural disaster, and traditional government services and expenses are not eligible. So what is considered low income? Low income is based on limits that are set by HUD each year. Gloucester is located in the area that is Boston, Quincy, and Cambridge. For us, low income is anything that is at or below 80% of the area median income. And these change every year, and we update them once they're released and certified by HUD. So how does Gloucester spend CDBG? So we really push all of our funding to tie back into low and moderate income. So under economic development, we have done small business assistant grants and loans, micro enterprise grants, job training programs. For housing, we have the first time home buyer and down payment assistant programs and housing rehab. For public services, year after year, we support public services that address the needs that we outlined in our 5-year con plan. For the most part, these are local nonprofits, and this is one of the categories that is capped by HUD at 15% of our annual allocation and 15% of our program income. And then for public facilities, just includes assisting and improving facilities, streets, sidewalks. We also have assisted local organizations with things such as bathroom renovations to make them ADA compliant. So this slide highlights some of the organizations who have benefited from CDBG. So for example, we granted CDBG funds to support the Open Door Food Pantry for those community members suffering from food insecurity. And as you can see, funding has also gone towards Wellspring House, Healing Abuse Working for Change, among many others. So here's a snapshot of CDBG investments. The top row is this year through January 25th. So as you can see, we have spent a little under 400,000 in housing rehab and over 70,000 for first-time homebuyers. And we have also spent around $16,000 towards public services so far and have committed 137,000. As you can see, in 2020, we dedicated a lot of funding towards economic development, which helps small businesses, stay afloat during COVID. So back to why we are meeting and why we have invited you all to participate. It's really important to our program to know what the needs are in the community and what your input is. So thank you for being here and joining us. So now we are in our question section of the meeting. So our first topic is housing, and we have 2 prompting questions. So please feel free to raise your hand. And when you speak, please let us know if you're representing an organization. And if you are a resident, please give us your name and address just for the record. And so our housing topic questions are, what do you all see as the most common housing problems, concerns in Gloucester? Or what changes have you seen in the housing situation in Gloucester over the past 5 years? So yeah, feel free to, raise your hand, and if you want to input anything, we would love that. Any hands or anything, Jamie?
Oh, I'm just now getting my first hand up.
Okay, awesome.
So Linnea, I'm going to promote you so that you can speak. You should be able to speak once you unmute. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we
Yes,
can hear you.
I would say that the most common, Linnea Hegberg, I'm a resident of Gloucester, and I also work at Senior Care, which is an older service agency. I think the most common housing problems I'm seeing are lack of affordable housing and a sharp increase in the cost of houses. And people are seeing a lot of increases in their taxes as well that comes with the increased property values, but they're not necessarily able to or desiring to sell their homes so that they can pay their, where else are they going to live? So.
Right. Thank you for your input. Anyone else want to participate?
Thank you, Sarah. I think you raised your hand and then I missed it. So I'll be allowing you to speak. So once you unmute, you should be able to talk. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I was for like flagging. Thanks. We all know that there's a housing crisis, and in Gloucester in particular, what we're seeing here at Hawk, I'm the executive director at Healing Abuse Working for Change. What we're seeing at Hawk and what we know, both nationally and in Gloucester, that domestic violence is one of the leading causes of housing instability for women in particular, and women with children most particularly. And our process for determining, putting so many additional barriers to people to proving that they've experienced domestic violence in order to receive assistance with housing, at many times are just unrealistic or overly burdensome. And so people aren't getting that assistance they need. And that's where we're seeing families in the community really get destabilized by family violence. So that's unfortunately a trend that we see, and we see continuing, and it's just getting worse when there's, as the prior participant just noted, the lack of affordable care housing.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so if there's no other
Right,
hands.
I may have removed Sarah quicker than I should have.
Oh,
I see her hand up
that's-
again.
Sorry, I was just trying to put it down. All good, thank you.
Oh.
All right. So there's one more person with their hand up. Let's see. Irina, if you want to unmute, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, thank you. Irina McWilliam Lopez, Executive Director of the Cape Ann Y. In terms of housing, the challenges, I think we've talked about those, and the Cape Ann Y and Y of the North Shore is working to address those with our senior affordable housing coming up. But one thing I wanted to add to the conversation as well is that there's also the challenge of education and not in my backyard. And I'm just speaking to that coming from the perspective of being an entity that's that I'm participating in an entity that's focused on affordable housing is there's a lot of pushback from the community as well. So I think Housing for All and some of that education that's going on is hopefully helping. In terms of the changes that we've seen in the housing situation in Gloucester over the past 5 years, it's gotten more severe. And I think as a result, I do get the sense that the city, there's a much more concerted effort from the city perspective, and then also just educating residents who are homeowners and who are potentially, just really reticent to have new affordable housing for resource reasons, for view reasons, and for other reasons. I think there's that cultural and perception challenge as well.
Thank you so much for your input.
There is another hand raised, but the description just says Action Inc. So
Okay.
you'd be able to speak if you want to unmute and introduce yourself. That would be great.
Hi, this is Kristen Masek. I'm the Director of Marketing and Planning at Action Inc. Thank you. We have just completed our community assessment report as well as our strategic plan, and affordable housing was something that was identified through a lot of our primary data collection through focus groups, as well as stakeholder interviews and surveys. I think it's a multifaceted issue. I think over the last 5 years, obviously, the world sort of turned upside down, and you had a lot of current residents who found themselves unfortunately unemployed for a period of time due to businesses closing due to no fault of their own, and were at risk of losing their housing. We also had people who were no longer geographically connected with having to go into an office in Boston or another city. So where remote work kind of took a, and is continued to, continuing to be part of our work landscape. The people who, no longer needed to be connected with, a commute, were moving to areas that offered them a lot of recreational opportunities, green spaces. And I think where we had individuals who may not have come into the Cape Ann area previously, now actually found themselves able to do so, and were able to take advantage of any affordable housing that happened to be available. So there were, multiple factors that I think have impacted some of the housing market in the area, as well as individuals who, with the housing market. Additionally, I think there were, people who were able to take advantage of the great rates, as well as converting former two-family homes into condos that price themselves out of what our residents were able to afford. So I think it's, it's multidimensional. Add on top of that some zoning that may or may not allow for some multifamily housing. And I think that those are all the sort of the factors that are sort of contributing to where we're finding ourselves in the city currently.
Thank you so much. And another question could also be what you would like to see in the next 5 years as well. If anyone else wants to participate.
I don't see any additional hands raised.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next topic. So our next topic is economic development. So our questions are, what are the most common economic challenges you see in Gloucester today? What industries or economic sectors are growing, and what sectors are shrinking?
I don't see any hands raised yet, so I just want to remind people that these are just our prompting questions. If there is something related to economic development that doesn't necessarily speak to one of these questions, we still would love to hear it. Okay, I have a hand raised. Irina, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. So I would actually love more data on this. I think this is really important data for our community. But in terms of some of the most common economic challenges in terms of Gloucester itself, I think that, you know, obviously the fishing regulations have changed the local economy immensely. And I think we had just heard someone else who was talking about how COVID and quarantine has changed behavior and shopping habits. So Main Street is not quite Main Street anymore. And so in terms of workers and training catching up with that, it's just not parallel, right? So we have a lot of folks that aren't necessarily trained or able to find opportunities in this current economy. So I think that that's something that we certainly need to focus on, and I know community colleges are trying to meet that need, but that really is what I see as an economic challenge that we're facing. Industries or economic sectors that are growing, I would just have to assume that I think real estate took a hit over the past couple of years, but we are more of a tourism, hospitality, real estate economy now, more of a service economy. So I just think in general that service economy seems to be growing, and then the retail and laboring sector seems to be shrinking. But I would love to see data, because these are just perceptions that, based on just seeing things live and not necessarily fact checking the data.
Thank you.
Linnea, you should be free to speak. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to add to what the previous speaker said. Just as a resident of Gloucester, there seems to be a lot of empty spaces, like East Gloucester Plaza, you know, a lot of areas where there used to be small businesses, and it seems as though we are having fewer and fewer small businesses. And, you know, along Main Street, it looks like there's a lot more kind of offices and real estate agencies opening up at that, you know, at that kind of ground level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so any more hands before I move on? And like Jamie said, you could talk about anything under this topic, doesn't have to be these specific questions.
Yep, I don't see any more hands. And also,
Okay.
if someone is inspired when we have moved on to another topic, again, please feel free to give us the feedback. It's not once we move past this slide, we're done talking about it. So at any point, we are happy to take any feedback. But still no more hands.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next. So our next topic is public and social services. And our questions are, what are the most common social services issues or needs in Gloucester today? How are Gloucester seniors doing? How about its youth? And what groups seem to need the most help? So again, you can, you know, talk about anything under this topic.
Irina, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. Well, at the Y, at the Cape Ann Y, you know, we serve all generations and we see all generations, and we have a sense of the need in terms of, you know, whether it's financial aid or just what we're seeing and hearing. And it's hard to say what groups seem to need the most help because across every generation, I think that we're seeing different needs. But you know, with seniors, it's certainly hard to see so many seniors in our community that so desperately need affordable housing. And are really just scraping by, after an entire lifetime of working and trying to support themselves and their families, that's a really tough thing to see when in terms of the way that seniors have to face these uncertainties. And I think when it comes to youth, there's a cultural aspect I'm not sure how much we really can control. But there's just a lot of dysregulation in terms of just what the etiquette is in terms of respect and how we treat each other. So we've been testing out and trying out a lot of things, whether it's youth boxing or mentorship or leadership, just trying to figure out how to connect with youth and teach a common set of values.
Thank you so much.
Linnea, you should be able to speak again.
Sorry, I was having trouble getting onto unmute. I think from a senior standpoint, and as I said, I'm the director of community programs and planner at Senior Care. And one of the biggest issues that we face is there is a workforce shortage. So we're trying to fill homemaker and home health aide needs of area older adults, and it's really hard for our provider agencies, always to have the staffing levels that we need. So this connects a little bit, I think, to the last question as well. And some of it is geographical. Gloucester is kind of at the end of the road. So in maybe some of the other communities where they're closer into larger areas, there's more workers, but up here it's really hard.
Thank you for your input.
Andrew Dunn, you should be able to speak now.
Thank you, Jamie. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Dunn. I am with the Open Door. I'm their grants manager. So, the big thing that we're really noticing is that food insecurity in the community continues to rise pretty substantially. We're waiting on final 2023 numbers right now, but I can say that our numbers are up pretty much across the board. We have experienced about a 30% increase in requests for food assistance through our food pantries. And we're distributing 3,000 meals a week, which is triple our pre-pandemic numbers. We're relaunching in-person community meals. We're pretty much doing everything that we can to reach people in whatever ways work best for them. But all we're seeing is more need, more people coming in. I think we've served about 1,000 more unique individuals this year than in past years. So yeah, that's obviously it is our mission focus, but it is something that we're really noticing is that the numbers since COVID just continue to go up. And I know we're talking about seniors and youth. I think one other group that really, really needs help right now is single mothers and single parent households. I think that's a often overlooked community that really needs support in this way.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Andrew.
I forgot to unmute myself. Mary Ellen, you should be able to speak if you unmute yourself.
Hi, Mary Ellen Rose. Gloucester resident. I'm looking at of the groups that I think what I've seen for the most need, seniors, transportation to get more seniors participating in all the wonderful activities that are taking place at the Rose Baker Center. I'd love to see a lot more activity there. And from the seniors that I've talked to in the community, their biggest challenge is getting in there and being accustomed to riding the public transportation or their discomfort with it. Some of them have long driveways and that type of thing to get to the bus route pickups and are still not familiar with the ride on demand system. So I'd like to see some type of way that we can get more seniors to the facilities so that they can enjoy the activities that are provided for them there. The other area is involving a program that we're developing called Artworks, and that is programs directed toward people that are in recovery and families supporting people either in recovery or actively struggling with substance abuse, and things to keep them occupied and preventing them from going back to using substances out of either boredom or a lack of employment opportunities or other stresses in their lives. So I guess that kind of also goes hand in hand with activities for youth. I hear a lot of parents saying, gosh, there's not anything for kids to do around here that they can access freely. And I think that whether it's funding activities at the ward levels, if we could create community centers at each ward, which would be within bike riding distance or walking distance for the ward members, that would be helpful. So the three areas would be youth activities that are ward specific, senior activities, senior transportation to get seniors to activities that are already planned for them at Rose Baker, and substance use and those supporting family members with substance use issues, activities to keep them engaged and supported, feeling supported by the city. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Sarah, you should be able to speak.
Hi, Sarah from Hawk here again. I wanted to echo and second what one of the prior speakers talking about. One of the challenges we're facing is being able to hire folks to work for the relatively low pay that we're able to offer. I think supporting nonprofits as employers is a really important step for Gloucester to thrive. Next up, I would say because of the court renovation in Gloucester, which is a great thing, but with the court closure, anybody seeking a protective order needs to travel to Peabody. And that is a huge issue for many people. And, you know, our most vulnerable residents. Hawk has been able to raise funds specifically for this, but that, you know, as the renovation comes into its second year, the residents of Gloucester are going to need continued support in order to access court protections.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
David Holden, you should be able to speak.
Yes, David Holden from the Gloucester Housing Authority. Although what I'm going to speak about is something that was referred to earlier by Andrew from the Open Door, and that has to do with support for families, both single parent and two parent households. We have run a number of economic prosperity programs for families trying to move up and out of poverty over the past 5 or 6 years. And the biggest barrier that we're finding from people to be able to increase their earnings potential is the lack of affordable daycare and access to quality daycare within our community and also regionally. Again, it has to do with not being able to attract people for the low paying wages and also just a lack of providers within our area. We have fewer providers now than we did 5 years ago when we first started our programs. And I think that that's something that needs to be highlighted a little bit more.
Thank you, David.
Sarah McClanahan, you should be able to speak.
Hi, this is Sarah McClanahan. I am the Grants Associate at Pathways for Children. And I just wanted to add to what many people have said about the needs of families right now. Of course, the lack of affordable housing is a huge issue. And also, I would agree about the challenges with affordable childcare. And this year, especially with so many new families coming to the area from other countries and not having homes, we at Pathways have had a huge increase in families that qualify for Head Start services. And we're always trying to meet the need, but again, there are challenges with retaining staff. CDBG has helped us with that this past year, but it's these are just really large challenges that continue, and it seems like things aren't really getting better, especially not quickly in terms of housing options, homelessness, and families needing this access to affordable childcare.
Thank you, Sarah.
I do not see any more hands up.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to our next slide. Okay, so for public facilities, our questions are, what do you see as the most common types of public works needs in Gloucester today, such as road repair, sidewalks, water sewer improvements, and where in Gloucester do you see obvious needs?
Mary Ellen, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. Water quality, absolutely. Sidewalk improvements, as we have an aging population, sidewalk accessibility is paramount for walkers, wheelchairs, and other aids that our senior population uses. And road repairs so that on the main thoroughfares, there aren't as many the patches in the roads make it very dangerous for bicyclists to ride, since we do have bike lanes, but the roads are in such disrepair from patchwork repairs. That's a big problem. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linnea, you should be able to speak.
Yes, I'm going to offer a very low level as a resident of Gloucester who lives on East Main Street, and the sidewalks are absolutely appalling. I had my mother living with me for 2 years who used a walker, and going out one side of our house, we could not get more than 10 steps. She could not navigate, and going the other direction, we could get up about 3 blocks. But there is no way people park on the sidewalk. The sidewalks themselves are a mess, and I don't know how anyone, who needs any kind of mobility assistance could get up and down the sidewalk. They'd have to go out into the middle of the street. East Main Street is also a narrow street with a lot of curves. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't see any additional hands raised.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on from our question segment. So yeah, if you have anything you wanted to add, you can always email any of us or call us. So our PY24 public service applications are now open, and they are due by March 8th at noon. So all applications will be submitted online through Neighborly, just like previous years. So how to apply? So you apply via Neighborly and just press on public services. The link is here. If you need any help or haven't used Neighborly before, definitely please reach out to me and I can be of assistance. And so this is our last slide. It just gives a little overview of requirements for applicants, which you can review before you apply. So for example, just must meet certain cost benefit thresholds. You must enter into a formal agreement with the city, invoices with quarterly reports, things like that. Okay, everyone, so this is our last slide. I wanted to say thank you again. If you didn't participate tonight, you can always email us or call, like I said. And thank you so much for your input. These mean a lot to us. So thank you, everyone.
Zoe, do we want to open it up to questions for people that might be
Oh, yeah,
submitting
def-
applications this year?
Yeah.
Okay. So if there are any organizations who have questions specifically about the application or application process that you want to ask now, we do have some time. If there's anyone who has joined the call that wasn't here when we were doing the other pieces of public input, and there is any feedback you want to provide to us, you're also welcome to do that now before we officially wrap up and sign off. All right, those hands are really not flying up. All right, well, as Zoe said, we are always accessible and available via phone or email. So if you do have questions later, again, like Zoe said, feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.